Hello, this is part 2 in the tutorial series on using pitch class sets in the diatonic symmetric harmony context with chord tension level control. I will discuss chord progressions in the Schillinger Diatonic-Symmetric System, where the chord structure pool has been enriched with pitch class sets after mapping these onto the Hindemith chord classification scheme. This episode focuses on tetrachords and I'll discuss fundamentals and show examples. The goal is to create an extended tonality texture with harmony dissonance control. I'll demonstrate chord progressions in the Schillinger Diatonic-Symmetric Harmony system while mapping all possible 4-element pitch class sets on the chord group classification scheme proposed by Paul Hindemith. I refer to part 1 for more fundamental discussion and the focus on the 12 possible 3-element PC sets. Here's a brief summary of the subject so far. In strict diatonic symmetric harmony, we combine root movements within a diatonic scale with an independent series of chord structures and thirds also derived from the same scale. Revisit part 1, where an overview of progressions in the Schillinger Diatonic-Symmetric Harmony system was presented. There are only 7 chord types in thirds, comprising all possible combinations of the 4 semitones, the major, and 3 semitones, the minor third interval. Writing the bass part, we have to decide on either diatonic chord roots or a fully diatonic bass part, an aspect discussed in a separate tutorial where the consequences of inverted position chords and the use of passing 6th and 6/4 chord groups was discussed. We may expand the pool of chord structures by inspecting the properties of pitch class sets. Each of these is characterized by a unique label, a prime form showing the closest voicing of the chromatic pitch classes in the set, and the 6-element interval vector. PC sets may be used in original and inverted form. The interval vector shows the number of consonant and dissonant intervals in the set, from the 6-semitone tritone interval in N6 to the semitone interval N1 on the left. I've demonstrated PC set properties and atonal composition techniques in various other episodes on this channel. We aim for controlled use of these PC set structures without using a fully atonal musical idiom. The approach is to map the PC set interval vector onto the Hindemith chord group classification scheme for extended tonality, and then apply the result in Schillinger Diatonic-Symmetric Harmony, where the selection of the upper part chord structures over a diatonic lower part is another degree of freedom. Hindemith defines 6 chord groups, with main division based on the presence of the tritone, the 6 semitones interval. Subgroups are discerned based on the occurrence of dissonant intervals and the chord being in either root or inverted position. In this episode, I'll look at the properties of the 29 possible 4-element PC sets. Here's an update of the chord classification diagram with 2 errors corrected compared to episode 1 in this series. There was 1 typo in group 3 and 1 miscalculation of the number of minor thirds in the diminished chord in group 6. We use this diagram when inspecting the PC set interval vectors and categorize the possible sets into a Hindemith chord group. For 3-part structures, the result was 9 usable sets, including the 4 diatonic triads. In this episode, we apply the same process to the 29 possible 4-element PC sets. This overview shows the result after classification of the tetrachords into the 6 chord groups. This classification yields 28 useful Hindemith tetrachords, with the chromatic cluster set 4-1 rejected and no sets in group 1, which contains triads only. Note that the majority of sets land in group 3 the one without tritone but with major and minor second intervals, and in group 4, which is with tritone and single or multiple sharp dissonances. There is one ambiguous set 423, a chord structure in fourths that belongs to both group level 3 and 5. We will not listen to all 29 options. Here I present a selection from the possible 4-element PC sets. Some have a diatonic chord character, such as the major and minor 7th chords, the dominant 7th, and half diminished chord. The interval vector is also shown above the staff. Some structures have symmetry, therefore limiting the number of unique transpositions, such as the whole tone cluster 421, which has 12 unique instances. Note the occurrence of cluster-like chords, that is, with high number values for N1 and N2, and the so-called all-interval chord 4Z15 with interval vector 111, 111, of which we find 2 companion PC sets with a Z label. Let's listen to this selection presented in staff notation and as a pitch class disc diagram. We may then inspect the dissonance and tension level within each chord group, which is useful for the many chords in groups 3 and 4. The approach is to have a closer look at the interval vector elements N5, representing perfect consonant fourths and fifths, N4 plus N3, representing imperfect consonant thirds, and N2 plus N1, the mild and sharp dissonance, that is, seconds and sevenths, in that order. This yields a possible dissonance level ranking within the group, as shown here for the 10 4-element PC sets in group 4. This is my ranking proposal, and you may prefer a different order. After completing this process, we have achieved an expanded pool of 10 triads and 28 tetrachords for writing harmony in a quasi-tonal idiom. The diatonic character is mainly determined by the bass part. Our expanded set includes traditional chords in thirds, but also modal variants and more modern structures with various degrees of tension. What I did not cover in this section is the additional freedom we have in writing the chord structure in either root or inverted position, and the voicing of the parts, in particular the vertical distribution of the dissonant intervals. But now we may start to write chord progressions using these principles and the results obtained so far. Example 1 has the following characteristics. We use 4-part chord structures only. The bass part is in C-Ionian, that is major, and we design a predetermined chord tension curve with group levels between 2 and 4. For a 4-part setting, we select a PC set from the group, then determine the voice leading based on maximum overlap between 2 consecutive chords. you may want to use the PC set inspection tool on my website. The bass part must be a pitch from the diatonic scale, and the shape of the bass part must make sense in a diatonic context, somewhat equivalent to cadences in tonal music. We use the sets in both original and inverted forms, as shown above the staff. Note the non-diatonic altered notes in the upper parts. These create a chromatic setting. Pitches may resolve in the expected direction, raised notes with sharps and upward, flats in descending direction, but may also move more freely. Correct resolution is not obligatory in this harmony type. What counts is the quasi-tonal rootedness through the bass part and the majority of upper layer notes in the original diatonic scale, plus the control of tension and dissonance level. This extended tonal idiom is most suitable for functional music, that is for film or video games. Listen to a rendering with sustained ensemble strings. The example is mildly dissonant, with a somewhat jazz orchestral background flavor, due to the 7th chords with many thirds. Note that the orchestration, duration of the chords and the selection of an instrumental form has not yet been decided, and this may significantly affect the overall impression. In example 2, we again use 4-part sets only. And we start with the diatonic bass part in the B-Dorian minor mode. In the tension level curve we see group levels 3 and 4 only. We gradually increase the dissonance level for the 4 chords within each group. Use the set dissonance ranking discussed before. And we control the direction and interval relation of the outer voices. Note the contrary motion. The overall impression is moving away from a tonal minor plus 7 chord, with increasing tension level over 8 chords, before suddenly returning to home bass in major. Determining the harmonic rhythm prepares this example for orchestration. Here, a setting for brass section with trumpets, horns, trombones and tuba and appropriate dynamics seems straightforward. In this example, we apply 3 and 4 element sets and a G-Lydian-Augmented diatonic scale used consistently in the bass part. There is a wide tension level range from group level 1 to 5. Chord structures are used in original and inverted form. The example shows the repeat of structures in measures 2 and 3. It opens and closes as a major triad, and there is part doubling for 3-element sets. The rhythm suggests a quasi-ancient dance character and a setting for strings or woodwinds. There is rather extreme dissonance in the center, with an obvious Hindemith flavor. I now proceed with 3 orchestrated examples with annotated scores. Even a fully tonal example may be interpreted in terms of a diatonic symmetric harmony setting and a pitch class set with Hindemith chord classification scheme. The chord progression is in C minor with a tonic pedal point. There is an extended half cadence from minor tonic to dominant degree. PC set labels and group tension level are shown above the staff. There are 5 triads and 1 inverted intermediate dominant 7th chord with alteration. See the D7 sharp 5 over C in measure 5. This progression is set for full symphony orchestra in a very short cue with heroic character. There is a main theme in half notes for brass, trumpet, later horns, and mid-high woodwinds. Harmony is set for moving lower strings and clarinets, later for arpeggio strings and trombones. Note the many scalar and arpeggio patterns in upper woodwinds, later joined by violins. Next is a 17 measures long chord progression in 3 phrases with mainly 4 element sets. It is based on an A minor scale. The harmony tension level was predetermined by the curve shown. This is a typical curve with gradual tension increase and decrease, and an apex with maximum dissonance around the golden section, at about 2/3 of the length. In the bass part, the altered raised 6th and 7th degree move in the right, that is, the ascending direction. However, there's the poor F natural in the bass just before the closing chord, which moves in the wrong direction. Altered pitches in the upper parts are resolved rather freely. However, augmented intervals have been avoided in the individual parts. This is a harsh sounding progression. Note the 2 occurrences of a chromatic shift of the structure in the last phrase. Here, the voice leading is determined by the 2 sustained and overlapping pitches in the consecutive structures. It has been set in 3/4 time signature. The harmonic rhythm is determined by the Fibonacci series 7-4-3-1, that is, in reverse order. The instrumentation is for solo marimba with 16th note patterns in syncopated arpeggio style. The final example is a PC set diatonic symmetric setting in disguise. This yields an ethnic and world music texture with traditional African and modern instruments. The tonic is G, with diatonic scale G-Mixolydian as confirmed by the opening 3-part set 3-9, voiced as S2 and S4, group 3 level, for balafon, which is imitated by syncopated trombones. I definitely wanted to avoid the overuse of pentatonic or modal harmony clichés. The ethnic flute introduces the first 4-element set, 4/12, in the original and inverted form at group level 4, but in a non-Western tuning system. The next element is a set of 4 tetrachords, 2 from the lower tension level group 2 and 2 more dissonant group 4 chords. These 4 sets are also used melodically, first in the African flute, later in the walking bass guitar with parallel motion in the electric guitar. As a chord progression, it returns in a block chord setting for horns and trombones. The 7-piece brass section requires pitch doubling. The middle parts are in cluster voicing. The same 4 structures are also used in the closing and as transitions, where the trombones play 3-part subsets. Rhythmically, note the juxtaposition and combination of the triplet and straight 8th note patterns. In this episode, we proceeded with the development of harmony tension level control by using PC sets mapped onto a chord classification scheme as proposed by Paul Hindemith. We inspected the 4-element sets, yielding another 28 tetrachord structures for application in a diatonic symmetric harmony context. Sets may be used in original and inverted form, in root and inverted position, and for both close and open voicing. In a number of example progressions, I demonstrated writing a diatonic bass line and various techniques for creating the upper parts in a series of chords. These include maximum number of overlapping pitches between consecutive sets, maximizing the number of upper part pitches that belong to the diatonic scale for the bass, subsets, and doubling. The degrees of freedom have increased significantly compared to a diatonic chord progression. With tension level control, we may adhere to an almost completely diatonic mood or go wild and create an atonal setting. Use this language for functional music and develop a unique signature in your compositions. Help this channel to grow by subscribing and sharing or liking this tutorial. Visit the website for more content or giving financial support. Thanks for watching.